بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ask Iman, broadcasted live from the London studio of Eman Channel on Sky 757. We're also streaming it live on our social media platforms, including, or in particular, Facebook page and of course our YouTube channel. So please don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe, as you can see on our screen. YouTube channel, Facebook page, Twitter handle, and of course don't forget hashtag Ask Iman. Inshallah, I'm your host Qamarul Islam, and joining us tonight, none other than Fadilat Sheikh Shams Ad-Duhaa. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, is there a smile because Fadilat Sheikh, or is there a natural smile?
You read your mind. I was just marveling at your pronunciation.
Jazakallah khair for that. Let's start. But before that, may I remind our viewers, if you would like to phone in, as it's a live interactive Q&A program, all the necessary contact details are displayed at the bottom of your screen. And of course, you can leave us your questions on the comment section below, either on our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel. Inshallah, if time allows, we'll try our level best to take as many questions as possible. But of course, as always, our priority will always be given to our viewers who call in live into the studio. And of course, you can drop us a text on WhatsApp, and the number you can see displayed at the bottom of your screen. Now, Sheikh, let's start. January month, exactly last week on Tuesday. We know it's a depressing month for many after the festive season. It's called National Divorce Day. Now, I'm not going to go too much into that subject, but what I want to talk about is alarming rate within Muslim community. Sadly, divorces are taking place. And now we hear and see a lot of case studies out there, mature couples or mature, where the children are going to university, are getting married, and we're hearing separation. And it's very alarming. Now, I want to understand from you as a sheikh, as an imam, as a teacher. I'm sure you've worked in the community for so long and you've seen issues that we have within our community. And if we do not talk, if we do not tackle this issue now, then the future will be more challenging. What's your take on it, and what advice do you have, especially in particular people who are planning to get married, of course, this year, and especially to older couples who have been married for 20, 25 years and now they're thinking of separation?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wa sallallahu ta'ala wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. So I have a very different take on this, and I wish I had more time to share it, but very briefly, to me, I don't like addressing this issue from the perspective of, of expressing alarm at the rates of divorce. There's any number of reasons why divorce might happen. Divorce is something that is permissible in Islam. It's not haram.
However, the most disliked?
It is the most disliked. But it's there for a reason.
True.
It's there so that people can have an out when they cannot stay in.
Of course.
So the way and of all of the things that need to be worked on preventatively,
correct,
divorce makes the most sense, in the sense that when divorce happens, we accept. And I'll tell you why I say this, because we know culturally, in some of our societies, particularly the subcontinental societies, there is huge taboo attached to divorce.
Especially in particular women or sisters.
Yeah, so it's taboo, and there's a kind of, it's lopsided against women. So a man divorces his wife, it's not too difficult for him to get married. A woman is a divorcee, and it's really, really difficult for her to remarry. So, and I think that just focusing on expressing alarm at rates of divorce just continues this kind of sense of taboo. I think when divorce happens, we accept it and we help people who've suffered divorce to move on. Divorce isn't always because of abuse. Sometimes it's just because two people just can't continue to stay married to one another, and they would like to move on and perhaps move on in life and so on, whether on their own or whether with another partner. And this is perfectly legitimate. The Quran talks about, when the Quran talks about talaq in Surah Al-Baqarah, right? It speaks about, it speaks about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that you want to show interest. I'm paraphrasing. You want to show interest in a divorcee before her iddah is even over, before her waiting period is even over, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't openly make any proposals or anything like that, but you may make hints That's how open it was. There was absolutely zero taboo. People got married, their waiting period was over. By the end of their waiting period, someone's ready to marry them.
People have married older women, people have
Yes.
married
So
divorcees, etc.
my point is that rather than focus on divorce, what we want to see is healthy marriages. We don't want to see unhealthy marriages where two people's mental well-being, spiritual well-being, a family's mental and spiritual well-being is being absolutely destroyed. But just because of society's taboo about divorce, these people continue to live together. And don't misunderstand me. I'm not speaking in favor of divorce. I'm saying when people are married, their focus should be on, they should not take the marriage for granted, right? If divorce is always an option for people, it's an out, it's a socially accepted exit out of marriage, and we don't associate taboo, then there is a greater likelihood, particularly for believers, right? And I'm assuming that when practicing Muslims divorce, they're not divorcing because of some liberality inside of them, right? It's not happening because of liberal value. It's happening because they just can't continue in the marriage. That's perfectly legitimate reason for a divorce to happen, right? So therefore, if divorce isn't taboo, if people are not socially pressured into remaining married when things aren't working, chances are that people won't take marriages. There's a better chance that people won't take marriages for granted and will work harder to make it work. So our focus should be on what we need to do in order to make our marriages work better. Right.
That's a very good point. And also, we need to understand, we talk only about rights, but we never mention or hardly mention within the discussion about responsibilities. Yes, there is rights, but there is responsibility as well. There is love, there is responsibility as well. We only see one side of the picture, and the other issue we may have is so-and-so, or within the society that we live in, there is some sort of effect that affects our marriage, because because we've literally heard or seen, for example, issues through social media, issues through a lot of things that are not discussed openly, and these things then build up and eventually lead to a path that eventually there's no point of return. So as you have mentioned, preventative and of course healthy marriage. And these are two valid points you have mentioned.
But I think I don't believe that healthy marriages, so things in life, things succeed and fail.
Correct.
Often based on how we view them, our worldview, our outlook towards something, how we understand something. That how we understand something informs our attitude informs the way we behave, right? And with regards to marriage, I find that if our understanding of marriage is on the basis of rights and responsibilities, both of them, not just rights, but rights and responsibilities.
Correct.
And then that informs our attitude, that informs our behavior, then for me, there's a greater chance that such marriages won't work. And a kind of an analogy of that is like a person who like right from the outset, they practiced religion only on the basis of avoiding the haram and only doing the minimum obligatory, right? That person, although according to a hadith, it's possible for a person who truly does that to attain salvation, such a person is in danger because they do not have their nawafil and their mustahabbat and things like that to help them on the day of judgment if there are weaknesses in their obligations, which inevitably there will be. Rights and responsibilities are similar to that, right? There will inevitably be weaknesses in rights and responsibilities, but if that is the level at which you operate, things won't work. You have to operate at the level of akhlaq, right? It has to be at the level of the dictates of good, generous conduct.
And of course, understanding the deen without saying it goes. And of course, we should leave.
Yeah, but people think they understand deen if they've understood rights and responsibilities.
Yeah,
they haven't. Akhlaq is part of deen.
Thank you very much for that. And of course, we should leave a little bit of room for a bit of sacrifice, a bit of compromise. No?
That's akhlaq.
Thank you very much for pointing that out. Swiftly, I've got literally less than 1.5 minutes. Let's see if we can take this first generated question. I have taken paracetamol capsule, but some say it has gelatin. Is this haram?
Okay, well, it has or it hasn't. So some can say whatever. the particular capsule you are taken, does it or does it not have gelatin? If it has gelatin, you cannot have it while there is an alternative available. So, generally the hukum with regards to medications that have a haram ingredient in them is that it is only permissible to take them if they are absolutely medically necessary and there is no alternative. Does that make sense?
Clear.
So in this case, you can't take it, you take the alternative. You take the ones that are without the gelatin.
And of course, that goes without saying. We have to consult our qualified doctor, take advice and suggestions from them. And of course, you have heard the spiritual guidance and take steps appropriately. We're going to go for a short break, but before that, may I give you a reminder, 0203 515 0757, our studio number. If you'd like to drop us a text on WhatsApp, 079 16841 483, and of course our international viewers can call us using the WhatsApp number. Please don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe to all our social media platforms, including Facebook page and our YouTube channel. Of course, we have other mediums of platform as well. And we're live on our website, imanchannel.tv. Inshallah, we'll be right back in a few moments. Do stay tuned with us. You're watching Ask Iman live on Iman Channel. Thank you very much. Welcome back. You're watching Ask Iman live on Eman Channel Sky 757. We're also streaming it live on our Facebook page as well as on our YouTube channel. And of course, I'm in conversation with Sheikh Ad-Duhaa. Now, moving on swiftly to our callers, let's see who's on the line. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Thank you very much for calling in. Your question, please.
I was just wondering if it is permissible to invest in the stock market. I know there is a difference of opinion with companies that have a certain amount of debt.
Okay. Fine. So your question is basically straightforward. Is it permissible to invest in stock market? Is that correct? I think we have lost the caller, but I think we've got the question.
Yeah. So if you're investing in companies whose predominant trading is in the halal, then it's permissible. Ulama use a kind of 50, like they use 50% as the line. So if 51% or more of the business is halal, then you can invest. If it's less, if it's less than that, then you can't invest.
Okay. So the question is, we cannot give a blanket rule here on the show. A person needs to.
You have to research the company. You have to research the companies.
And of course, then sit down with a qualified sheikh and then have a one-to-one conversation to make to take a decision then afterwards.
Well, I mean, the point is that the main thing to take away is you have to research the company and make sure that the majority of the company's business is in halal. That's it. It's nothing complicated about that.
Okay, inshallah, no problem. Now, let's move on swiftly to our next caller, and then inshallah, we'll take more generated question, and of course, question that you're sending us on our YouTube channel, of course, on our WhatsApp too. Next caller, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Thank you, my dear sister. What's your question?
I have a question that was asked to me by a student of mine who's doing writing a story about the story of Musa alayhi salam. And she asked me, when Musa alayhi salam's mother puts him into the basket and throws him into the river and tells the sister to follow him, what happens to the sister in the story?
Okay, good question. It's your student who's asked that question.
Yes, she did, and I said I didn't.
MashaAllah, dedicated student there. Great. Thank you very much for that question. Let's see. Let's find out. Sheikh.
I don't know specifically.
Okay.
I haven't in my reading of history or the story of Musa alayhi salam, I haven't seen any reference to what happens to her eventually. But you know, chances are she is the sister of a prophet, of two prophets, and inshallah, what happened to her will be good. The main matter of concern is that was she a believer or was she not? I would assume she was. But we don't know. I can't say specifically. There isn't much detail about her recorded in history.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Hope that is clear to you, my dear sister. Moving on swiftly to our next generated question, and that is about hadith, Sheikh. And the question is, do we get rewarded for implementing weak hadith?
The vast majority of, I'll keep this as simple as I can. The vast majority of scholars, there's difference of opinion about this, right? But the vast majority of scholars allow using weak hadiths to take motivation if the hadith is simply telling us of the reward or the virtue of an act that is already established. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That means that if, according to the majority opinion, there's a minority opinion that you can't use weak hadith for anything.
Correct.
But if we take the majority opinion and you act according to a weak hadith, then the rule itself is telling you that the action has to already exist in the deen. Does that make sense? Right? So therefore it goes without saying that when you act according to a weak hadith, if you do it correctly, then you're going to be rewarded because the act is already rewardable according to authentic sources.
I see.
Where there's the question mark is if you're acting according to a weak hadith and there's no mention of that practice anywhere else. It's not in the Quran, it's not in any authentic hadith. The only place where it is mentioned is in the weak hadith. In that situation, if if that hadith is unanimously weak, right, then we should not practice on that particular amal, on that particular practice. And some ulama take the view that weak ahadith can still prove istihbab, right?
Translation?
So according to weak ahadith, you can't establish that something is sunnah, but you can establish that something is good, mustahab,
Okay.
right? So those are some of the views about it. But the general view, though, is that weak ahadith can't just be used blanket. They have to be used to establish virtue in something that is already virtuous.
Okay.
Right? And the weak hadith gives you extra motivation.
And there are a lot of classification of hadith as well, and it's not possible for a general public to understand because the sanad and other things. There are a lot of things we just can't blankly say that this is.
It's not a straightforward issue. I mean, but weak hadith is da'if is a designation. The next one down is very weak, da'if jiddan, and then there's fabricated.
Yeah, so there is.
So da'if, da'if jiddan and fabricated we can't use at all. But the point is, it's very difficult for ordinary people to know the difference. So therefore, an easy criterion is to simply ask yourself, is this already established? Like, for example, 2 rakats of fajr are already established as virtuous, authentically, right? Now, if you come across a hadith that tells you, if you do the 2 rakats of fajr, you're going to get this amazing reward, right? Which you haven't heard anywhere else.
Yeah.
And then that inspires you to do the 2 rakats of fajr, then there's no harm.
Okay.
Because 2 rakats of fajr is already established.
Established, right.
That's how it has to be used.
Thank you very much for that.
If it's something new, then be wary and ask a scholar.
Thank you. It's clear. Hope it's clear to our viewer as well. Now moving on to our next question, and this time we'll be taking from WhatsApp, Brother Qasim, all the way from India, Kolkata. And he's asking, I would like to ask that in fard prayer during sajda, can I make dua like any Quranic dua or any dua proven from authentic ahadith?
In Arabic, yes.
Okay.
If you make it in Arabic, it's permissible.
So there isn't.
Look, Hanafi fuqaha tend to be, they're concerned that people might make some sort of a mistake that might damage their fard, right? And therefore they discourage it. But principally, it's permissible.
Okay, so when
if you know what you're doing, you're going to read du'as from the Quran, you're going to read du'as from authentic ahadith, right? You're not going to end up saying something in Arabic that doesn't suit the language of the Quran and hadith.
Okay.
If you're confident and you're educated about that, then you can.
Okay. Is there a difference between fard salah and nawafil, or?
Well, nawafil definitely is permissible. Again, condition though is that it has to be in Arabic.
Condition is Arabic. Okay. Is there a difference?
So I would say the difference is that in nawafil, and by nawafil we're talking about sunnahs as well, yeah? So sunnah mu'akkada is included in that. In nawafil, I would say it is encouraged, you should definitely do it. If you don't do it, you're missing out.
Okay.
Right? But in fard, some fuqaha, they give caution because in case some people make a mistake. But if you know what you're doing, it's permissible.
Thank you very much. Next question is, I would assume, is from a young viewer, and is asking, why did Allah create other planets like Mars, Jupiter, etc., when nobody even lives there?
A simple answer is so that they can point to the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because how can you understand greatness, vastness? How can you understand the infinite power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you have no concept of the infinite? Space, planets, the universe, all these stars, all these constellations, galaxies, they give us some notion of the infinite. They give us this notion of vastness, right? And it amazes us. And that's exactly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. That amazement leads to Allah. So Allah created the universe as signs for us, right?
Which signs? Signs or signs?
Signs to Allah.
Okay.
Things that we look at and then it immediately moves our attention to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does that make sense? If those things didn't exist, we wouldn't, that sense of wonder and awe that comes when one thinks about space, we would be deprived of that, right? So, and space actually focuses our attention on certain attributes of Allah that you can't think of in that way when it comes to anything else, right? Because nothing is like space. Nothing gives you that sense of of vastness, the way space does, that sense of something being without limits, something the limits of which are not known. And if you think about it, these are some of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So certain things in creation give us symbolize certain meanings that enable us to reflect about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and some of his attributes. And I would say in the most straightforward way, that's one of the things, one of the purposes of space, right? Without speculating about aliens and things like that.
Yeah, that's another subject. We won't go into that. And my dear viewer, I hope the answer is clear to you. If you would like to ask any question, or if you would like to call into the studio, or 203-515-0757, our studio number, 07916841483 is our WhatsApp number. And of course, our international viewers can use the WhatsApp number to call in directly into the studio. And don't forget, we're also live on our Facebook page as well as on our YouTube channel. So please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to all our social media platforms, including Facebook page and our YouTube channel. Thank you very much so far for sending us questions on our WhatsApp and of course on our YouTube channel. Inshallah, we'll try as many questions as possible, but we'll also take your call. We'll be right back in a few moments. You're watching Ask Eman. Thank you very much. Welcome back. You're watching Ask Eman live on Eman Channel in conversation with Sheikh Ad-Duhaa. Let's start this segment with a generated question. Moving on swiftly, Sheikh. Next question. How can I make the most of my time when I find myself procrastinating or wasting time?
Bismillah. So, one small bit of advice is there's a lot of good material out there about procrastinating.
Okay.
And procrastination can sometimes become one of those problems that you just can't overcome. It just keeps happening, right? So one thing is try to understand it better. There's lots and lots of books on procrastination itself, lots of articles online. So read up on it so that you have a better understanding of the problem. And then a lot of these resources will suggest techniques, right? To be honest, in my opinion, the only way to overcome procrastination is to just do. And often when we procrastinate something, like I've suffered procrastination when it comes to writing something or starting an essay or something like that, right? And often we procrastinate because we're waiting for the ideal start. You know, we're just not satisfied with what we're starting with.
True.
And one thing that I've found, and that helps me also, that helps me avoid procrastinating, is that work produces work. Meaning, once you start doing a piece of work, that's when your creative juices flow the best. When you're in that mode, right? If you're just sitting, thinking, and you're not doing anything, then you're not fully in the mode. You're not fully immersed in the activity, and chances are that your ideas are not going to be generated. So, first of all, you need to overcome this myth that that I need to have everything prepared. I need to get all of my ideas before I start the piece of work. Often, when you start and do little bits, better ideas are generated with work. If it's an essay or something like that, or if it's a piece of work at school or whatever, often you'll find that if you do a rough draft and it's not very good, when you go over it a second time, if you're productive with your time, you go over it a second time, the improvement is that you get like a 50, 60%, 70% improvement, right? Because now you're generating new ideas on top of what you've already put down. So that's one thing. Second thing is, when you work, don't overburden yourselves. Give yourself regular breaks. Don't work more than 30 or 40 minutes at a time. When you set targets, don't set the whole target at once, because that can psychologically overpower your mind and overwhelm you. So always give yourself little targets. In the next half an hour, I'm going to do this little bit, right? And then I'm going to give myself a break. Or in the next 45 minutes, I'm going to do this little bit of work. Then I'm going to give myself a little break, and so on. So again, look up the resources on it. I actually don't need to spend time talking about it because there's great resources on there. Read up on it, inshallah.
And also, basically, the core point is preparation and planning is very, very important.
From a spiritual point of view, dhikr helps. Dhikr helps. When you feel yourself procrastinating, you become aware of your procrastination. Spend some time sending salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That will give you motivation and drive, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair for that. Obviously, it's a very vast subject, and one episode is not enough, definitely, that I can say. Moving on swiftly, next question we'll take from WhatsApp. Assalamu alaikum. Brother, if a non-Muslim working in your house, can you address him as brother or bhai?
No.
Straightforward question. All right. Thank you very much for asking that question. Moving on swiftly to our next question. Assalamu alaikum. It's from YouTube. What happens to Dajjal on the Day of Judgment?
Based on what we know about Dajjal, nothing good. Okay. All right? But look, let's not worry about what's going to happen to Dajjal on the Day of Judgment.
Shall we worry about ourselves?
Worrying about Dajjal on the day of, what happens to Dajjal on the day of, is like worrying about Iblis. What's going to happen to Iblis on the Day of Judgment.
Or Shaitan.
We should be worried about how we can protect ourselves from Iblis and how we can protect ourselves from Dajjal.
Okay.
All right? So the thing that should concern us is what's going to put me in a better position to resist Dajjal and resist the Dajjalic system. Right? Which basically is the Shaitani system. So focus on ourselves, inshallah ta'ala. That's what's important.
Thank you very much. Next question. Assalamu alaikum. Sheikh, is it worth to give up regular university in order to study Islamic university offering Sharia and Quran? I'm yet to decide whether to join or not. You're a teacher.
My straightforward answer, blanket, is going to be yes. But obviously, you have your life, you have your priorities, you have your parents, and you have all of those things to consider, which you should. But if you want my blanket advice, I would say yes, especially if you're a young person who has a keen interest in Islamic studies. You shouldn't go to an Islamic university and study Islam because you're being pressured into it. Because,
what do you mean by being pressured into it?
you know, like it's your grandfather left in his will that it's his dream, or your parents are like, this is what I've always wanted for you, and you feel pressured because of it.
Parents
but
might
you don't
say,
really want it.
Dad might say, I wanted to become an alim, I didn't get an opportunity, I want to fulfill that dream to my child.
So I would still say, yes, you should listen to your father because it's a good thing. But my point is that's not going to turn you into a good alim. What's going to turn you into a good alim is if you dedicate yourself to your studies and do well. So if, for example, your father's encouragement and persistence, you take that on board wholeheartedly and you are going to work hard, then absolutely you should. My point is, however you look at it, it is certainly better. The question is, should I do this or that? If you ask me, it's like, it's a no-brainer for me. My son, I'll tell you, I implement it in my life. My son right now, he has a choice of university, right, and going and doing a degree in Islamic studies at an Islamic institution. That's a false choice, in my opinion. The only question for me is my son happy with what I would like him to do?
Okay.
What I would like him to do, no brainer, Islamic studies at an Islamic institution.
Thank you very much. And of course, there are a lot of things to consider. We need to look into it, of course, as Sheikh
Yes,
has
of course,
mentioned.
and you should.
And we will encourage, as Sheikh has said. However, there are a lot of things that needs to be considered. So please do speak to your family, parents, and of course, take the appropriate decision. If need be, speak to an alim, a qualified person like Sheikh, and sit down and take their advice on a one-to-one basis. Moving on swiftly to our callers. Let's see who's on the line. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, my dear sister. Your question, please.
Yeah, I'm having a problem with my child who is 11 years old.
Is he a boy or a girl?
My child, 11 years old, his daughter.
Daughter. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because before she used to pray, read the recite the Quran, everything. Even giving people, da'wah as well. So, and now she's refusing everything. She doesn't want to learn the Quran. She doesn't want to pray.
So what's your question, my dear sister?
What the question is, just wanting to know is there, because the people used to say to her that so many things, like a young girl like your age, is evil eyes something to do with.
Are you trying to say, let me understand this, are you trying to say your daughter used to be practicing and now she is fading it out? I mean, the element of practice is dying out. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I understand.
Okay, it's clear. And you've mentioned it's an 11-year-old daughter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, khalas. The question is clear. Let's hear the answer from the Sheikh.
I think the main thrust of the sister's question is, could this be because of evil eye?
Yeah,
right.
That's it.
The thing about evil eye is that it either is or it isn't, right? You can get it. You can go to a local scholar or sheikh and see if that is the case. My advice is you do that, but you move on to the things that you need to do. You need to do things like have a look at her friend circle. See what kind of friends she has.
But then she's only 11 years old.
11-year-old girls. She's an 11-year-old girl, not an 11-year-old boy. There's a very big difference between an 11-year-old girl and an 11-year-old boy. 11-year-old girls are already have a degree of maturity. See, the key is children at a certain age reach their own volition, right? They start to make their own decisions, to make their own choices. And sometimes those choices are influenced by parents, sometimes they're influenced by their upbringing, sometimes they're influenced by friends and peers.
Surroundings, yeah.
Right? So, and that's the age at which that happens varies from child to child. You can get a girl who doesn't reach that stage until 12, 13.
Okay.
Right? My point is it's possible for a girl to reach that stage at 11. Right?
Okay.
And therefore, the question really is, what is informing her choices and her decisions? Is it her parents? Is it a good Islamic upbringing? Or is it peers and friends who she has access to at school? Who does she hang around with? What kind of friends are they? What are the things that she thinks are important now? What she used to do is different, because what she used to do before, she used to do when she wasn't making her own decisions. Now she's making her own decisions. She has certain wants and desires now, and she has external pressures. She has external influences. Find out what those influences are, and also, whenever our children start to reach this kind of a stage, it's a good idea to deal with things through conversation and discussion.
Open and friendly conversation. And of course, as parents, we can make dua for our children. Of course, we can do that. And it's again time for another break. We'll be back in a few moments. You're watching Ask Iman live on Eman Channel on Sky 757. We're also streaming it live on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. So please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to all our channels. 0203 515 0757, our studio number. You can drop us a text on WhatsApp, 079 16841 Inshallah, we'll be right back in a few moments. Thank you very much. Welcome back to the last segment of Ask Eman, live on Eman Channel, Sky 757. You can also watch the repeat of this program either on Sunday or Monday. And of course, later on, you can find the videos either on our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel in conversation with Sheikh Shams Ad-Duhaa. Before we move on to our callers or questions from WhatsApp or YouTube or Facebook, we need to have a bit of a discussion because in the previous segment, a mother called in and she was concerned about her daughter and she mentioned about evil eye. So I'd just like to clarify something, Sheikh, from you. Certain people say there's nothing called as evil eye, it's your own action. And there are qualified ulama saying there is a concept of evil eye.
There are two things I want to address. Number one is when things happen that we can't explain, and we start to assume that it might be evil eye or sihr or something like that, that should not distract us from the possibility that there is a logical explanation for it.
Okay.
That there is, like if it's a health issue, and you suspect that it could be something like that, then you should not rule out the possibility that it's still a health issue, and address that as well and get the person checked up with a doctor. So in the same way here, you might think, I can't understand why this is happening. Is it evil eye? I would say go ahead and go get that checked up with someone.
But why do we have to always jump to evil eye?
My point is, it's not about jumping. If you do jump to it, fine, but it cannot be either or.
Okay.
It cannot be either or. And what happens sometimes is, because we assume evil eye, we get blinded to the possibility that it could be these other things. And then more time passes and the child is in even more danger. So my point is that your effort to try to address the possible wider causes, peer pressure, what your child is consuming on the internet, all of these types of things, you have to consider fully.
Okay.
The fact that you think it could be something else, something spiritual in nature, should not distract you from these causal factors. So that's the first thing.
Okay.
And to address the other issue is, no, there is such a thing as evil eye. I'm not ruling out that possibility. I'm saying sometimes people look at that and they assume this is what I'm going to look into that, and they ignore the other factors. But while you ignore those factors, the situation is getting worse. All right. Okay. And the last thing I want to say on this is, I was just starting on this, that look, once young people get to a stage where they've got friends and they've got peers and they've started to consume things on the internet and things like that, then in order to get through to them, it can't be just through us giving them our expectations. We have to start to reason with them and
engage in conversation.
Yes, engage in conversation. And
we cannot just say, oh, you're young, you're too small, you won't understand.
I mean, we've only addressed the issue of peer pressure and what kind of friends, etc. But there's other things, like it's not uncommon for 11-year-old girls and boys to have smartphones.
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
If you've done that, you've given them access to a whole load of danger, to a massive range of
And also I'd like
problems.
to add, we parents might think we're smart, we have blocked all the necessary content, but children are more smarter than parents. They know.
Most of them don't entirely work.
Yeah.
Most of them don't entirely work. I try some of them. Yes, you should.
Yeah.
Look, there is, I don't know what this sister has done, and what this particular parent has done, right?
In general, you're talking.
I would say if you've given a smartphone to an 11-year-old, then you're in the wrong.
Well, as a parent?
Simple as that, as a parent.
Okay.
You should not have done that.
Okay, fair enough.
All right? If your child, if it's for safety, etc., give them a non-smartphone. Give them one, just a normal...
A standard phone that can receive phones and calls.
That can receive calls and take text messages, and that's it. There is no excuse to give a child a smartphone at the age of 10, 11, 12, whatever.
Thank you.
My advice, children should not have smartphones before the age of 16.
Good.
All right, and even 16 sometimes. Like, I gave my son a smartphone at the age of 16, and I felt like, why did I do that? I wish I'd waited even more. And the problem, by the way, brothers and sisters, why is it so difficult why do children want it so much? It's because other parents like you and me, are giving their children smartphones at the age of 10, 11, 12.
And even if we don't get them,
and that's where the peer pressure builds up.
Yeah.
Right? Do you know what I do with my children? When my son started to tell me, my son started asking for it at the age of 12.
Okay.
When he did that and he said other parents do, right? I had a conversation about the harms of a smartphone, and I said, do you think those parents have done the right thing? I asked my son.
So basically, you're trying to say
And he
you
said
engage in conversation.
Yes, this is an example of that. I asked him, after explaining everything, I asked him, do you think your friend's parents who've given them smartphones have done the right thing? And he said, no, I don't. So your father is doing the right thing? Yes. Okay, fine. If ever you feel under pressure from your peers, like somebody's taking the mick, oh, Hamza's got a brick phone or something like that. Do you understand? I have no problem if you say to them, I'm sorry, but it's not my fault that your parents aren't taking care of you properly. Because sometimes, like I've done this loads of times with my children. I've had to teach them what to say back to their peers when they face mockery because of a choice that I've made.
Okay.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
Those decisions are wrong, and our children should know that they're wrong.
Okay. So basically, in other words, if our children don't, let's put it this way, if someone doesn't have something, we shouldn't mock, we shouldn't make a joke about it. And if someone has it,
no, but children will.
That's
we
what
can't
they call
control what
children.
Those children aren't even watching this show. Children will do it. We have to make our children resilient against it by tooling them up with the necessary argument. Our children should know why it is wrong so that they can also say to their friends, well, if your parents have given you a smartphone, they're wrong.
Fine. We won't encourage them to say it directly on their face because otherwise...
No, they should. They should. Absolutely, they should.
Otherwise, we may have some playground issues.
Absolutely.
But we understand the whole issue here is that as parents, it's our responsibility because Allah has given us amana, and it's our responsibility that we need to look after our children so that in future they become the good brand ambassadors of Islam. Moving on swiftly to our callers. Let's see who's next on the line. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Which lead me up to exactly the thing I wanted advice.
Please go ahead.
It's about bridge building between old and young and how to balance the values. The present day youth who are growing up, the Muslim youth, I try to work with them most of my life, and I found them, they have a very good strong argument against us, saying the people who come from other countries and other cultures, they don't have enough respect for British value, but they still come and take from this country, but they don't put anything back in. That's the first thing. The second thing is, they say, if your claim is so true that Islam is the best thing around, and why the Muslim people are the most awkward one around this world, and they are the one who is flocking into this country, which is a non-Islamic country. How do you address this, and how do you balance it?
Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. A bit of statement and of course two relevant questions as well, Sheikh.
So there's a number of issues here. This is
briefly. We've got literally very limited.
This is what I do, right? So this is you can look into that a little bit more. But first of all, our children need to know history, a little bit of history. How is it that their fathers and grandfathers ended up in this country, which will take them to the story of colonialism, which will also answer some of the questions about why Muslims are the way they are, why the Muslim world is the way it is. The Muslim world being the way it is now is not accidental, right? It's because of what was done to it, yes? And that also then deals with the issue of the superiority complex, or our inferiority complex versus the kind of superiority of European countries in the West, and so on and so on. Where did that superiority come from? It's important to look into that because that will address the whole issue of moral superiority.
Okay.
Because nations who've gone and brutalized millions and millions of people all over the world cannot claim superiority, right? And you should not take any prisoners with regards to this. Our children need to know about these kind of things. Number one. Number two, engage in dialogue with them about these kind of things. And this thing about clash of cultures, I'm sorry, but if my child has a problem with something that is from Bengali culture, I'm Bengali.
Or Pakistani culture,
or
Indian
culture, or Arabian culture, and that's got nothing to do with Islam, I will say to my child, this has nothing to do with Islam, this is Bengali culture, don't ever show any interest in it. It's nonsense, right? The only cultural paradigm, the only culture that we need to defend is the one that we deem to be objectively of value, objectively good, and that is the Islamic one.
So basically, the Islamic culture, akhlaq, etiquette takes the precedency over any other culture.
Yes, because that's the only one we can prove as being objectively good.
Okay.
Right? If there is something that comes from Bengali culture, we can't prove that to be good. There's no dalil for it.
Yeah.
The Islamic aspect, we can prove it that it is objectively good. That's the only one that we have an argument for. That also then tells us how to address British values. If there is something in British values that clashes with this, right, then we have to warn our children against it. If it doesn't clash, then it's fine. It's just culture.
Okay, so if it's in contradiction with the Quran and Sunnah takes the presidency. If there is no contradiction, if it's similar, that's fine.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, Sheikh has used Bengali as an example. It's any culture in general, of course.
No, I'm using that because it's my
just
culture.
An example, because obviously Sheikh is using his own example, but we're not specifically targeting any particular culture. May we make it very clear live on air. Last question, WhatsApp. The father of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, what deen was he on?
It seems clear from what the Quran tells us, and what's the open apparent meaning of the Quran, that he was not a person of Islam.
Thank you very much for that. That's all we have time for. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for giving us your valuable time. And of course, looking forward to many more episodes in the future, inshallah. My dear viewers, thanks to all the viewers who've called in. And of course, we couldn't take all the phone calls. We couldn't take all the questions on YouTube or WhatsApp. Apology, but inshallah, we'll be back again on Friday and of course on Saturday. However, tomorrow, it's Ask Eman Urdu. If you would like to ask questions in Urdu language and get an answer in Urdu, then of course, it's your show. Same time, same channel at 8 p.m. live. Of course, you can find the video of this program on our Facebook and of course on our YouTube channel, and the repeat of this program will be on either on Sunday or Monday. Until next time, subhanakallah wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum.